Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are embarking on a truly wild, speculative journey. We're going to take a deep look at one of the most absolutely terrifying creatures to ever patrol our planet's waters. And we're going to ask a massive, reality-altering question. What if the ocean's ultimate apex predator never actually went extinct? It's just a completely fascinating thought experiment that rewrites, well, basically everything we know about our modern oceans. The evidence we've lined up for you today is going to be incredibly fun to explore. Okay, let's dive into this. Do you remember that iconic scene from Jurassic World? You know, the one where there's that massive feeding show in an aquatic enclosure, and this gigantic, crocodile-looking dinosaur just erupts from the water to casually swallow a great white shark whole. Literally, in one bite. Well, that cinematic monster wasn't just some Hollywood imagination. That was a Mosasaurus. And today we're using the facts from our source material to explore the very real history of this creature and exactly what our world would look like if it was still swimming right below the surface today. So, moving into section 1, meet the giant Mosasaurus. To truly grasp what dominated the waters of the late Cretaceous period, which is about 70 million years ago, by the way, we really have to look at these numbers. 17 meters, or 56 feet long, and a staggering 28 tons in weight. Wow. To put that into perspective, we are talking about a highly mobile, incredibly dense predator that was essentially the size of a modern-day school bus. But instead of seats, it was packed with pure muscle and absolute predatory instinct. This completely grounds the monster in historical reality for us. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're dealing with. As our source material points out, the Mosasaurus looked like a terrifying crossbreed between a whale and a crocodile. It's like nature just combined the two. On one side, it had this incredibly strong tail and a barrel-shaped body, which suggests it swam through the water with the powerful, fluid mechanics of a modern shark or a whale. But on the flip side, it featured the lethal hardware of a crocodile. We're talking massive, armor-crushing teeth set inside an absolutely enormous jaw. But here's a really critical distinction that dictated exactly how this animal lived. The Mosasaurus was a marine lizard, not a fish. What you should absolutely take away from this is that as a reptile, it had to breathe air. This basic biological requirement meant it spent its life swimming relatively near the surface of the water so it could take a breath. Also, despite having pretty large eyes, researchers note it actually had poor binocular vision. And you know what's interesting? We know they primarily lived in saltwater oceans, but other types of mosasaurs have actually been known to navigate freshwater rivers too. No way, right? So, what fuels a 28-ton, air-breathing ocean lizard? Well, as an obligate carnivore sitting very comfortably at the absolute top of the food chain in its ecosystem, its diet was staggeringly varied. We're talking fish, birds, long-necked plesiosaurs, hard-shelled turtles, and yes, even other mosasaurs. But it had one particular favorite: sharks. The Mosasaurus absolutely loved eating sharks. Because it was so incredibly huge and its jaw opened so impossibly wide, it could eat pretty much anything it wanted whenever it wanted. To consume a huge diet like that, they relied on a terrifyingly simple hunting strategy. It was just a brutal two-step process. Step 1, pierce the prey with those massive teeth. Step 2, swallow it whole. Because they possessed a huge double-hinged jaw, they didn't even need to meticulously tear their food apart. They functioned almost like giant aquatic snakes, just clamping down and consuming massive animals in a single devastating gulp.
Okay, section 2, rewriting ocean ecosystems. Let's look at the bigger picture. Now, we know the Mosasaurus went extinct with the rest of the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period, but what if they didn't? Let's quickly trace this timeline. Toward the end of the Cretaceous period, about 70 million years ago, other massive predators like plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs started dying out. This is the crucial moment that actually made mosasaurs the prominent, undisputed predators of the sea. If that dominance was never interrupted by a mass extinction, the timeline extending all the way to our modern era, say around the year 2014, would look drastically, totally unrecognizably different. So the crucial point is this: our modern oceans would be far, far less populated. Think of the ecological butterfly effect here. The Mosasaurus would have continued to feed heavily on huge sharks, small whales, and dolphins over millions and millions of years. In fact, a lot of the larger, majestic marine animals we currently know and love today might not have ever even had the chance to evolve or exist at all. Why? Because the Mosasaurus would have simply eaten all of them. Which brings us to section 3, the Carnival Cruise Mystery.
To really talk about a world where the Mosasaurus survived, we have to look at a very spooky, very real modern anecdote. Consider this account from 2014 carefully. Passengers on a Carnival cruise ship in the Gulf of Mexico claimed to see something swimming right near their vessel. One passenger, Paul George, reported seeing a, and I quote, huge monster, 50 feet in length. But what's truly chilling is the specific detail he noted when the creature came up for air. He said there was absolutely no spouting, no blowhole like a whale would have. Instead, it exhaled below the surface of the water, behaving exactly like a crocodile.
Now, to this day, it remains totally unclear what Paul George and those passengers actually saw out there. But as our source speculates, it definitely was out of the ordinary. It really forces us to pause, look at our massive, largely unexplored oceans, and ask, could mosasaurs have somehow bypassed entirely going extinct? Could they literally be roaming around our vast, deep oceans right now, totally undetected by modern science?
Let's jump into section 4, humans versus Mosasaurus.
Let's just pretend for a second. If we proved tomorrow that these 56-foot monsters were alive, how would humanity coexist with a creature that treats great white sharks as light snacks? Well, the immediate reality of modern maritime life would completely change. Big ships, like massive commercial freighters or Carnival cruise liners, they would likely be perfectly safe. But it would mean absolute disaster for fishermen in smaller boats or anyone who just loves to sail recreationally. Remember that huge double-hinged jaw we talked about? It was so incredibly wide that a mosasaurus could literally just swallow a whole recreational boat in one single go. Humans wouldn't necessarily have to avoid the sea completely, we would just strictly require much, much bigger boats. But here is the ultimate twist in this evolutionary tale. The Mosasaurus might have been the undisputed top predator at the end of the Cretaceous period, but since then, another top predator has emerged on the planet. Us, humans. And because of our rapid technological advancements, our emergence as an apex predator means the ancient Mosasaurus would instantly face its greatest historical threat yet. So how exactly would we hunt a 28-ton sea monster? Well, we'd exploit its biology. Remember our earlier point defining it as an air-breathing marine lizard? Because the Mosasaurus physically needs to come to the surface to breathe air every once in a while, it has to expose itself. That brief moment right at the surface is when it is most vulnerable. And that exact window is when it could easily become a massive, highly sought-after target for modern human fishermen.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is human nature itself. Because if they were still alive today, we wouldn't just hunt them, we would very likely capture them. The source material paints a really vivid picture where we would inevitably want to keep mosasaur specimens in captivity. We'd capture them for intense scientific study, for sure, but also for pure, unadulterated entertainment. We would absolutely build massive enclosures where millions of eager spectators would buy tickets just to bear witness to the ancient crocodile-whale hybrid that somehow managed to live through the greatest extinction event in planetary history. And that leaves us staring right back where we started. Could a real-life Jurassic World truly become our reality? If the Mosasaurus were alive today, it seems incredibly likely that the sci-fi feeding shows of the movies would become everyday commercial entertainment for us. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. If we discovered these magnificent, terrifying, ancient survivors swimming in our oceans today, who would ultimately be the greater danger to who? Would we be the prey, or would the Mosasaurus just be our next captive attraction? Keep that in mind the next time you look out over the deep blue sea. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.